welcome all. My name is Rachel Bukowski. I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Admission for the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm also a very proud alum of UMass Amherst. I graduated in 2012 with a bachelor's degree in psychology and a minor in education. And I've been working in the admissions office since I graduated. So this is actually my 13th year working for admissions. Plus, I actually did some undergrad work. I was a tour guide and a senior fellow, which is sort of like an internship. So I've been doing this a really long time. I truly love this profession, and I get really excited when I get to talk to potential, UMass students about UMass and admissions. So I'm really excited to talk to you all today about this process. So the University of Massachusetts Amherst is the flagship campus for the state of Massachusetts. So for those of you that aren't familiar or aren't from Massachusetts, we do have 5 UMass campuses. One of them is a med school, which technically doesn't count, but I count it because it has the same name. But UMass Amherst, my campus, this campus, is the flagship. So we're sort of like the main public school for the state. We have about 23,000 undergraduate students, and then we have about 7,000 graduate students. So for a grand total of about 30,000 total student body. A lot of people think that 30,000 is spread out over the UMasses. I get that question all the time, especially when I'm traveling, but that's not the case. That 30,000 is actually just here on UMass Amherst campus. So we are considered mid-size. Actually, a lot of people think we're a large campus, which I definitely recognize. We are a larger school for Massachusetts and for New England, but we're considered mid-size. I always like to say there's a lot of other schools in the US that are a lot bigger than UMass, but I definitely, again, recognize that 30,000 is large for New England and for Massachusetts. We are a Tier 1 research institution, which is essentially just a really sort of fancy title that we get. That means that we have funding from the government, from the federal government, that comes in for research, for undergraduate students. Now, when a lot of people think about research, their mind, in my experience, I've found that they go to like graduate student research or doctoral student research, like that very specific stuff, which we have that as well. We have graduate students and PhD students doing research, but this Tier 1 funding that I'm talking about is specifically for undergrads, which means you can start doing research right away as a first-year student, freshman year through senior year. You don't have to wait to be an upperclassman. You don't have to wait to be a graduate student. You have access to those research opportunities right away as a first-year student, as a freshman student, which is pretty cool. We have an Office of Undergraduate Research that handles all of that. So if you're looking at me right now or thinking, like, how do I even navigate that? Where do I even begin? We have an office dedicated to undergraduate research, and you can go talk to them and say, this is something I'm interested in, but I don't know where to start, and they'll help you with all of that. So your tour guide might give you more information about like specific research they're doing. A lot of our tour guides are involved in research, but that's just one opportunity that you have here as a student at UMass. We are located in Amherst, Massachusetts, which you all know because you drove here. Amherst is very much a college town. We're always voted one of the top college towns in the country. It's your very cute, quintessential New England college town. If you're not from here or not used to that, I highly recommend driving through our downtown. It's literally just right down the road. And you can see sort of what I'm talking about. We also share that downtown with Amherst College, which sort of leads me to my next point, is that we are part of a 5-college consortium, which means that we're associated with 4 other schools in our area, and those are Smith College, Mount Holyoke College, Hampshire College, and Amherst College. So those 4 schools are mostly, they're all private, but they're mostly like liberal arts type schools, whereas we're the larger public school of the bunch. Excuse me. And how it works is essentially students have access to those other 4 schools at no extra cost. You have access to their courses, their clubs, their activities, their libraries, their events, and vice versa. They have access to all of our clubs, activities, events, books, everything. So it's like this little shared system that we have. Another way to look at it is that you're paying for 1 school, but you have access to 5. Which is pretty cool. I like looking at it that way better. And they're all very close to us. Like I said, we share the downtown with Amherst College, so they're the closest one to us. Smith and Mount Holyoke are about 20-ish minutes away, and then Hampshire College is about 10 minutes away. So all fairly close. Your tour guide will talk more about this, but there is a bus system that is completely free for students. It loops our campus every 5 minutes and then goes to the other 4 schools every 15 minutes. So that's how you would get to the schools if you don't have a car, and your tour guide will talk more about transportation, but that's sort of the general way that students get around around and get to the other 4 schools. We have over 90 academic majors. I'm going to talk extensively more about majors in a bit. I'll talk about the application process for putting certain majors down, picking first and second choice. I'll talk about competitive majors. So I'll definitely be going more in detail, but just in general, we have over 90 different majors here at UMass. And then sort of my favorite little stat or rank, I'm not a big rankings person. You won't hear me spit out too many ranks here, but this one I think is very important, and that is that we are #1 for Best Campus Dining. We have had that rank for 8 years in a row. We take our food very seriously here at UMass, as we should, because it's delicious. I always like to tell students, just as an idea of like how good it is, I take my family, so my husband and I take our 2 kids to the dining hall to like go out to eat as like a family. Like we pay money to go into the as like a restaurant. That is how good it is. So I wouldn't joke around about that at all. It is that good. If you've had a chance to try it already, or you will, highly recommend you do that while you're visiting here today. All the dining halls are open because students are back, so you're welcome to eat in any of the dining halls. Your tour guide can help you sort of find and navigate that after your tour. Here at UMass Amherst, we are a very diverse campus. We have students from all over the country, all over the world, students from all different types of backgrounds. So what I like to tell students looking at UMass is that you are very much going to find your niche. You're going to be able to find your group. You're going to be able to find your people, your group, however you want to word it. You will find people that look like you here. You will find people that act like you, that talk like you. You will definitely find that here at UMass. But what that also means is you will find people who don't look like you here, who don't act like you, and who don't talk like you. And that is a good thing. That is what you want in a college campus. That is really what college is all about, is to meet new people and get new experiences. So you will very much be able to do that here at UMass, is to meet different and new types of people, which is awesome. Like I said, there's students from all over the country, all over the world that come here from UMass, or for UMass. Your tour guide is definitely going to talk more about this. I just like to give sort of a little broad overview. So here at UMass, you will have tons of different ways to get involved and to be more sort of like active here on our campus. This is actually one of my favorite parts about UMass, are the opportunities that you have here, like in addition to academics. So we have over 300 clubs and organizations on our campus. That ranges from different types of social clubs to academic clubs, honors clubs, student government, fraternities and sororities. That's all part of sort of those student organizations. I usually say, just like in high school, you have a ton of different ways to get involved. We have that here at UMass, just like probably times 100. So there's just more opportunities for you. We are also Division I for athletics. We also have club sports. We have intramural sports, if athletics is the path that you're looking for. We have different events that go on, student-run businesses, different ways to get involved in different organizations, community service type events, and clubs. So whatever you are looking for, I can almost guarantee we have it here at UMass. And if not, you can create your own club, which is pretty cool. Again, your tour guide will talk more about that and definitely give you more examples of how they're involved, and they know more specific offerings that we currently have. This slide, the first thing I want to mention is that, you are definitely going to college to be a student. That's probably the most obvious thing. You're coming here to get a degree, to get a major, to then hopefully get a job, and then, move forward with your life and continue. So being a student is definitely the first sort of priority for you, right? But you're going to be away from home for probably the first time, maybe in your life, or at least for an extended period of time, like you will be here in college. So you're going to need resources and maybe need help in other ways than just academics. And we have many different ways to support you academically. We have, and again, your tour guide will talk about this, but we have tutoring, we have professors' office hours, we have a writing center, we have an Office of Student Success, undergraduate student success that helps students in different ways. Navigating college and finances and things like that. But you're also going to need support in again, in other ways besides just academics. So you might need support physically. If you get sick, what do you do? If you need to talk to someone regarding mental health, you might need help spiritually, emotionally. You're again, coming here to be a college student, but you're also a human. So you're also going to need, more resources than just academics. And I always like to mention, and I try to really reiterate this, especially as an alum and an admissions counselor, that UMass does care about you in all of those ways. We want to make sure you're going to be okay here for 4 years and make sure you get all the help you need in all the different ways you need it. Okay, so this is just a snapshot of some of the things we have. This isn't even all of them. These right here behind me are some of the cultural centers centers that we have. CMAS is our Center for Multicultural Advancement and Student Success, so that sort of encompasses all of the cultural centers, but there's a couple more organizations that aren't listed. And then this over here shows you more about the different other resources, other organizations that students might need in all those other different ways. But again, this is just a snapshot. This doesn't even include everything. So now we're going to talk a little bit about majors, and then we'll start getting into the real admissions process sort of stuff. So this is kind of a big one. So I told you earlier that we have over 90 majors here at UMass, which is a lot of different things to choose from. I'm going to kind of get on a little soapbox here for a second, more than I already am, about majors. I feel very strongly about this, so just bear with me here. So in my experience doing admissions, I have found that most high school students don't know what they want to do with their lives. Most adults don't know what we want to do with our lives. Okay, so if you are one of those students who has no idea what you want to do, you're still trying to figure it out, whether you have absolutely no clue or you're narrowing it down to a couple, that is okay. You will figure it out, I promise. That is what college is for, is to figure that stuff out, okay? I had no idea that I would be this person up here talking to you about college admissions when I was a junior in high school. I remember my info session when I was a junior. I'm from California. My dad and I flew out. This building was not renovated yet, so it was closed. We were across the hall in Goodell. And I had no idea that I would be this person today talking to you about college admissions. I didn't think this would be my career, and it is. I get paid to do this, okay? So just keep that in mind. There's just so many things that you all haven't been exposed to yet, and you won't be exposed to until you get to a college campus, okay? There's a lot of different stuff out there that you don't even know about yet, okay? So with that being said, I just want to mention that our 90 plus majors sort of fall in these schools and colleges. So these are sort of the way we group our majors. I always tell students don't get too hung up on this. It doesn't, for the most part, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but what really matters is more the majors that fall into these schools and colleges. And obviously we couldn't put all 90 up on the slide, that's why it's not there. But if you look in either your booklet or in online, you can see the full list of majors, plus minors, plus certificate programs, master's programs, all of that's obviously on our website. I also want to mention that some of these majors are more competitive than others, okay? And this is where I'm going to kind of contradict myself a little bit, so bear with me. I'm very aware that I do this, but I will be a little contradictory here. So these majors here, the College of Computer Science, nursing, and anything in our Eisenberg School of Management, which is business, obviously, management, marketing, accounting, finance, sport management, hospitality, tourism management, anything business related falls into that. Those programs are all considered competitive, okay? Which means that there's usually extra requirements we're looking for during the admissions process, and some of them are restricted in terms of moving in and out of those majors. So for example, and this is where I really contradict myself, nursing and anything in Eisenberg, unfortunately, those two majors are closed majors, which means that we don't accept transfer students into those majors, like when you're a student here, which means you cannot come here undeclared and then transfer into nursing or business. It does mean that you have to know if you want to do either of those right away from high school, and you have to put those down as your first choice major on the application, okay? Those are the only two that are like that. Computer science, although it's still competitive, doable. You can transfer into computer science when you're here. It's still tough because it's competitive, but it's doable. It's not closed off like business and nursing. Now, I also like to mention that nursing is the one major we have where we don't accept transfer students externally either, which means that you can't go to another school. You can't start off at like UMass Lowell and then come to UMass Amherst for nursing. You have to be admitted right from high school for nursing. Okay, it's the only major that's like that. Eisenberg, we do allow transfer students externally, so you can go to another school and come for business, just not nursing. Okay, because that only programs that are like that. So I know that was very contradictory of what I just said about knowing what you want to do and it being okay, but those are the two exceptions to that rule, okay? So this is our timeline. This can also be found online. It's nothing too crazy, so don't feel like you have to memorize this. But essentially, we have two deadlines here at UMass. We have early action, which is November 5th, and then we have regular decision, which is January 15th. So the first thing I want to say is that early action, for those of you that aren't aware, early action is different than early decision. So early decision is the binding process. That means that if you apply to a school early decision, you are accepted, you are bound, committed, you actually sign a contract with your parent and your school counselor saying that you are going to be going to that school. We do not have that process here at UMass. I just like to mention that there is a difference because it's confusing and every school has different things. So early action for us is the non-binding process, and that deadline is November 5th, okay? The other thing you need to keep in mind for early action is that we probably, in November or maybe even October, depending on when you apply, we won't probably have your first semester or maybe even first trimester grades yet, which means that if you're someone who wants to have those included, you're like, no, I really want my first semester senior year grades, transcripts included in my application, I would recommend that you wait for regular decision. Okay, but if you're like, I'm all set, I'm happy, my application's set, I don't need anything else, my essay's done, my Common App's done, I just want to apply, then you can do early action and then you find out sooner. Okay, really the main thing is that we just won't have those sort of first semester transcripts yet. Okay, depending on your school. Some schools are able to send us first quarter or first marking period, which is totally fine. If they're official from your school counseling office, we'll take them. But I'd say most schools will wait until there's a certain deadline to send them out. If you apply early action, you should hear back from us sometime in January. It's usually like the middle of January. This year, we sent out decisions January 17th, so just a couple weeks ago. So if your senior friends might have heard back from us, should have heard back from us already if they didn't call us for early action. And then regular decision, we send those decisions out in March, usually like early, middle of March. Again, it's just early action is really just an earlier process. We don't like look at it differently. We don't fill up our whole class early action. We don't give away like all of our merit money early action. We don't fill up our majors early action. It doesn't work like that. It's just an earlier process. You just find out sooner. Okay. Any questions about that? How that works? Early action versus regular decision? Okay, that was pretty straightforward. I like to mention too that we do review holistically here, and I think that most colleges and universities do it this way nowadays, but I just like to mention it because I've been finding the more I do this, the more stress there is in like, do I have to have a certain GPA or a certain thing that I do or activity? And the answer is no. We could easily just like admit by major and have a whole school full of the same kind of person. Admit by GPA and have a whole school of the same kind of person. But that's not what we want here at UMass. We want a diverse student body. So we review holistically. We're looking at all parts of the application. We're looking at your essay. We're looking at your extracurriculars. We're looking at your courses, what sort of courses you're taking, not only what grades you're getting in those courses. We're looking at your family life, the essay, all of it is looked at, okay, when we're reviewing. So there's not necessarily one part that's, like more important than other parts, with the exception of maybe the transcripts, because, and I'm not the person who invented this statement, but if you're not doing well in high school, you probably don't do well in college. That's like statistically proven. But for the most part, it's a holistic, review. We're looking at all parts the same, okay? So those parts are all of these wonderful things that we need from you. This looks like a lot. I know this can kind of be, not overwhelming, but it looks like a lot at first. But a lot of these things actually go together and they're part of each other. So I don't think our application process is too bad. So we do need the actual Common Application. I've mentioned it a couple times, but for those of you that aren't familiar with it, the Common App is the Common Application. It's commonapp.org. It's essentially an application that students can fill out and send to a bunch of different schools by just filling out one application. And they just select all the schools they want to apply to and then send it off. So it makes it easier for you, but it also makes it easier for us to sort of read those because they sort of all look the same, which is nice. The Common App has, really the bulk of your application comes from the Common App. It's pretty tedious. It's many different pages of a lot of information. I always say take the time to fill it out. That will sound like obvious information to a lot of you, but you'd be surprised how many students send it in last minute and rush through it. We can tell when that happens. The extracurriculars and the essay are also part of the Common App, so there's no additional things you need to send us other than what's already part of the Common App. For the extracurriculars, what I like to tell students is that we're really looking for you to be involved in at least something outside the classroom. But that something doesn't have to be a specific something. If you're involved in a sport or a couple different sports, awesome. If you do community service, awesome. If you are involved in a bunch of different clubs, perfect. If you work, a lot of people think, I've been getting this more and more, a lot of students think that work experience isn't important on the college application. It 1000% is important. I always like to tell students that shows that you're able to manage your time, time management, and somebody trusts you to like run their business and be in their company, which is a really big deal. So working is awesome. Helping your family out is awesome. If you have family responsibilities, babysitting brother or sister or driving them to school or something, that is all stuff we want to see on the Common Application. Okay, that's all part of your extracurriculars. Okay. The essay is also part of the Common App. The essay is pretty open-ended nowadays. You can honestly pretty much write about any topic you want to write about and it will fall within one of the topics. It's very hard to not fit into one of those essay topics. So what I usually tell students for the essay is to look at the essay like an interview. We do not do interviews here at UMass, so the essay is sort of the place where you can, show us a bit more of who you are as a human. We see a lot of information about you. We obviously see your grades, your transcripts. We see where you're from, what your family life is like, kind of a snapshot, what you're involved in, your extracurriculars. But none of that really tells me like who you are as an actual human being. So the essay could be the real part where you could show us that, the real part of that application, okay? I also try to tell students, another question I get all the time now is, like, what do you want to see in the essay? Like, what are you looking for? And I would actually say the answer to that question is actually the opposite. Don't write an essay of what you think we want to hear. Write an essay of what you want to tell us about yourself. There is no essay that admissions counselors want to read. That came off wrong. There is no essay topic that we expect from you. And each admissions counselor might have like certain topics they like more or not like more. It doesn't really matter, honestly, because that's just part of the process. So don't write about what you think we want to read. Write about what you all want to write about, okay? When you try to write something that fits into a bubble, it doesn't come across as genuine, and it doesn't come across as we don't learn anything more about you, which is a bummer. Okay, so that's sort of the best advice I have for the essay and the extracurriculars. I do want to mention that the Common App does have, each school will usually have some sort of like member questions or supplement as part of their Common App. So here at UMass, we have a couple different member questions that we ask. For the most part, there's pretty simple questions. It's a question about residency. There's a question about family, already attending UMass, a couple other random things that we ask. But the main piece that we're looking for are these three supplemental, essay narrative topics, I should say. They're not extra essays. They're 100 words or less, so they're actually very, very short. I actually think these are harder to write than the essay because they're so short. 100 words goes very, very fast, faster than you think. It's barely even a paragraph. It goes super quick, and we can tell when a student hasn't put as much thought into those as the essay. So those three topics are: why are you applying to UMass? Why are you applying into the major that you're applying into, which could be as simple as, I don't know what I want to study. I'm going to find out at UMass. And then the third question is our newest one, which is essentially your sense of community. I am very transparent when I talk about this question, and that is that we added this question in response to the Supreme Court voting a couple summers ago to remove demographic information from the college application process. So if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, a couple years ago, 2 years ago now almost, the Supreme Court voted that admissions counselors can no longer see race and ethnicity on the applications. So we added this question in response to that decision. Okay, so a lot of other schools do this as well, and I usually then will get the question, well, do you just want me to tell you like what race I am? And no, that is not what we're saying either. We just want you to tell us about, again, your sense of community. That can be that can be maybe that you go to a rural school or a city type school, and that's your sense of community. It could be that you do family dinner every Sunday. It could be that you are involved in a specific organization that's really important to you, and that's where you identify your sense of community. Whatever it is, however you view, I've seen a wide variety of answers to this question, so there's no right way to answer this. Okay, well, however you view a sense of community, that's what we want to see with that question. Okay, but again, I am very transparent when I talk about that question as well. Any questions about that? Okay, the next thing is the transcripts. This is kind of the biggest chunk, maybe the most complicated chunk, so I'm going to spend a minute to talk about this. So here at UMass Amherst, we actually do recalculate every student's GPA that applies to UMass. And for those of you that are in-state, all the other UMasses do it the same way, and all the other state schools do it the same way. So like Worcester State, Fitchburg State, we all do it the exact same way. Okay, it's all part of the Mass Board of Higher Education. So how we do that is we first throw out all of your non-college prep classes. So those are things like PE or physical education, gym, health. Sports classes don't usually count. Unfortunately, like auto tech classes, foods type classes don't usually count, like woodworking, things like that. Now your college prep electives do count. So your music classes count, your art classes, your theater classes. If you go to a religious high school, those count. Like government, economics, computer science, psychology, sociology, those all count. Okay, it's honestly the biggest ones we see is like PE, gym, sports, those types of classes. Okay, so we throw those out. Then what we do is we convert your GPA to a 4.0 scale. Don't worry too much about this part. The only reason I even mention it is because when I talk about GPAs and anything you read in the brochures or anything you see online, you see averages or something that UMass put out, that is on a 4.0 scale. So sometimes I'll get students or parents that say, like, how did you get that number? It's because it's a 4.0 scale, which might be different than how your school does it, okay? Your school might have a 5.0 scale, a 6.0 scale, a 100-point scale. They might have no scale. They might do narrative transcripts. Don't worry about it. We will go in and convert your GPA to a 4.0 scale, okay? Again, I just like to mention it because that's how I will be talking about it the rest of the session. Then what we do is we give you more points for any honors and AP classes that you take. So essentially we give you a weighted GPA. Even if your school already does this, again, don't worry too much about it, but we will go in and recalculate it and give you more points. So essentially, as an example, let's say for example you get a 3.0 in an honors class, which is like a B average. For those of you not on the 4.0 scale, it's a B. We will give you a half a point higher for any honors class that you take. So at 3.0 becomes a 3.5, so basically a B to a B plus-ish. Okay, let's say you're taking an AP class in your high school and you get a B in that AP class. Again, you get about a 3.0, which is a B. We will give you a full point higher for that AP class. So that 3.0 becomes a 4.0. So basically a B to an A. Okay. Another thing that I like to say is also don't worry too much about this. Or at least don't worry too much about the comparison. What I like to tell students is that whatever your GPA is that you're thinking right now in your head, or if you were to like look it up in your school, it will probably be different when we go in and recalculate. Okay, it's almost always different. There are a few schools in Massachusetts that do it exactly the same way we do, which is kind of nice, but for the most part, it's different. Okay, it's also not a comparison. It's not like a good or bad situation. It's not like, oh no, mine's gonna be worse. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it because it's only in the context of how we recalculate anyway, so we're not comparing the two. It's not a comparison. We only use our weighted recalculated GPA. Last thing I wanna say here is that we do require one letter of recommendation, which just needs to be from an academic source, academic person, somebody who knows you as a student basically. So that can be a school counselor, that's probably where we get the most letters, but it could also obviously be a teacher, anybody who knows you as a student. We will accept up to 3, so the other 2 letters can be from whomever you like. If you want to do like your boss or a coach or a community service advisor or something like that. You could also do like a counselor, a teacher, and a coach. That's perfectly fine. What I usually recommend that you don't do is send us like 3 letters from 3 teachers because that ends up being sort of the same information over and over again, which is good. I mean, it's all like good stuff. It's not like they're talking negatively about you, but it doesn't really help us get anything new from, for your application. If you're going to send 3, I recommend that you do a variety and not just sort of the same person. But again, we really only require 1, so you really don't have to send us more than 1. So we've made the decision to move test optional for the foreseeable future. We extended that, which is good. I do just want to clarify though what test optional means for UMass because it does mean different things for different institutions. So for UMass, what that means is that you all, test optional means you all have the option to send me your scores. It doesn't mean that I have the option to see your scores once you send them. Okay? So if you send them, I will see them. If you don't send them, not a big deal. I don't think negatively of you. I don't think that you like bombed the SAT. I just really don't even think about it. I just look, oh, no test scores, moving on to the next part of the application. Okay, I promise it is not a bad thing if you do not submit test scores. But if you send them, like I said, we will review them as part of that holistic review. So again, just like the essay and the extracurriculars and everything else I've already talked about, they'll be looked at as part of that review. Okay. All right, I just want to do a little bit here on money talk. So these are the estimated costs for this year. They might change, especially if you're a sophomore, well, really junior sophomore. They will change. Each year they change just a tiny bit. The first thing I want to say about finances is that here at UMass, admissions and financial aid are separate. So as an admissions counselor, I actually do not see your financial aid information. I don't see how much your family makes. I don't see any of your tax information. It's a complete blind review for us. So what I always advise is that if you have questions about financial aid and about that process, filling out the FAFSA, especially with the new FAFSA, please feel free to call our financial aid office. They're very, very helpful, and they answer those calls all the time. So please feel free to reach out to our office or email. I do want to mention, though, that here at UMass, we do have merit scholarships available. And merit scholarships are different than the FAFSA and are different from the financial aid office. Merit scholarships are something that the admissions office reviews, and they're automatically reviewed. So you don't have to fill anything out like you do the FAFSA. You don't have to, check a box or whatever. Every student is automatically reviewed for a merit scholarship, and if you're awarded a merit scholarship, you will find out with your acceptance letter. Financial aid information and FAFSA packages are awarded. You'll usually get those a couple weeks after you've been admitted, but with merit, you find out with your acceptance letter, which is nice. So it does come all together. Okay, that's the only scholarship that admissions has, unfortunately. Everything else would either be through the FAFSA or through any other outside scholarships that you might apply to, on your own or through your school or whatever. Essentially, the merit scholarships are based on academics, so GPA and test scores if you send them. If not, don't worry about that. They are automatic, and it's not. I know some schools have like if you have this GPA and this test score, you get this amount of money. I know some schools like put out a chart like that. Ours isn't like that. Ours is a bit of a back formula. So what I usually tell students is that, and I should actually talk about this. This will remind me to talk about it. What I usually tell students is that if you're admitted into the honors college, you will most likely be awarded some sort of merit scholarship. Those two things don't necessarily go hand in hand perfectly together every time, but typically students that are awarded merit will also be invited into the honors college. So I'll talk about that for a second here. So the honors college, and I think there was like a little blurb about it on one of the slides, but the honors college is, it's called the Commonwealth Honors College. It's our honors program here at UMass. And so basically what that is, and then I'll tell you how to be admitted. What that is that it's our honors program here at UMass, and a lot of people think that it's separate. A lot of people think it's like a separate entity, like a separate, even like campus sometimes, and it's not. It's very much integrated within the UMass system here on this campus. There is a separate living area, which I'll talk about in a second, so I think that might be why some people get that idea, but it's very much integrated. Any major, any student, competitive, non-competitive majors can be part of the honors college. Okay, so it's not like just for the competitive majors, it's for all students. If you're invited into the honors college, you take 8 to 10 honors classes throughout your 4 years at UMass. So it's actually nothing really in addition. It's classes you would already take just at the honors level. And the honors level, a lot of people think like they must be harder, because that's what you know as like AP, but that also isn't the case. They're typically classes that might just go more in depth on the subject. The professor might share more like research or more on a specific topic that they're working on in that class. So it's really just more involved. It's not necessarily a harder class. I just want to point that out. Also, if you're part of honors, you will graduate with honors, which looks really great on your resume, especially if you're planning on applying to some sort of graduate program, medical school, law school, dental school, anything like that. You will do an honors thesis, which is actually pretty intense. It's kind of like a master's thesis where you spend your senior year actually working on it. It has to be approved by the faculty, and then you actually present it to the faculty in the honors college at the end of your senior year. So it's sort of like this big deal, this big project that you work on. And then also you have honors advising, which you also have. Every student already has an advisor that you're assigned, but honors students also have a separate advisor. So you sort of get like double advising. That's how I like to put it. And then the honors residential community, which I just mentioned, that's probably the main appeal to a lot of students. That's our newest living area, although it's about 10 years old now, which is funny to say, but it is our newest living area, and it's actually just right behind us here down the hill. So it's a little bit closer than some of the other living areas, and it also has air conditioning, which a lot of students love. I always laugh at that because, again, I'm from California, and I'm like, you need air conditioning here for the first 2 weeks and last 2 weeks. Otherwise, you don't need it. I don't know what the big deal is. But a lot of students love the air conditioning. So that's one of the benefits of is that you have the opportunity to live in the Commonwealth Honors College residential community. To be invited into that community, into the Honors College, we also automatically review. So just like merit, there's nothing you need to fill out. Every single student is automatically looked at for honors. If you're invited into the Honors College, you will also find out with your acceptance letter. So that will all come together. You'll find out together. You don't need to apply separate. You don't need to check anything off. There's no form. It's all part of the regular application. It's also a holistic review. Because it's an honors college, though, we are looking at academics kind of first. And what I'd like to tell students is that we typically invite / the class that ends up coming for the Honors College out of the first year students ends up being like about the top 10% of their class. And I don't mean that as in like we're looking at your high school rank. I don't mean it that way, especially because a lot of high schools don't rank. I just mean that it usually ends up being sort of the top 10 academically, students of that first year class. But we're also looking at things like leadership. We're looking at things like community service. What sort of impact are you making in your community, in your high school? Are you somebody that your peers look to as a leader? Somebody that your teachers even look to as a leader, your counselors? Are you making a difference in your community? Things like that are sort of the things we're looking at for honors. So there's not like one particular type of student we're looking for. All different students fit into this, but that's sort of like a general overview for honors. We get a little over 50,000 applications to UMass. Our acceptance rate's about 58, 59-ish%. Our first year class is usually between 5,000 and 6,000 students, so freshmen. And then honors usually has about 650-ish students in it. So it's about 10% of the first year class, yeah. And that's about the acceptance rate-ish. Each major is a little bit different, but that's sort of a broad way to look at it. So anybody that knows me knows that I absolutely love this university, like literally in love with it. That's why I've stayed for so long. That's why I chose to stay here after graduation, raise my family. I would love if every single person who came and visited today, not just this room, but also the previous session, could come to UMass. But statistically, that's just not going to happen, right? But what I want to say is that there are a lot of really great schools out there, a lot of really great schools. And I've been finding the more I do this that a lot of students feel like they can only go to one school. Like if I don't get into UMass Amherst, I'm going to be devastated and my life is over. And that might be the case. I mean, you might be upset for a little bit, but chances are if you go to another school, you will also be happy there because there's so many great schools that you will find your place at. You will fit in and you will find your home. Okay, so again, I wish we could all come here, but I promise you, you will be happy where you choose. Okay, there's just so many great schools out there. Okay. I'm going to leave you with my contact info here. This is a bunch of emails and social media. My email is right here. This can also all be found on the website, but this is probably the one to take a screenshot of. I really appreciate you all listening to me today. Thank you all.